Okay, well, cultures are mobile. You can't contain them. However many walls you want to build, however many attempts you make to strengthen frontiers, they continue to talk to each other and they continue to move. And so both translators and migrants are part of that mobility. People move, languages move with them, objects move with them, cultural practices move with them. And so what we find is that translation, in a sense, forms of linguistic and cultural translation are already always woven. I like this metaphor of weaving, of a fabric of translation, which is always already there in our cultural practices. And what you start seeing when you look at practices of translation is that also very often migrants are translators and translators are migrants. The same people are actually performing those practices. And of course, they're also embodied practices, which is something that is very much in the title of the conference here, Crossing Bodies and Crossing Frontiers. It is bodies that cross frontiers as well. And with them go languages and cultural practices. Let me put it this way. I was asked recently, how would my work as a researcher, as an academic, be different if I were a man? And I was thinking, okay, there are lots of ways in which I can think about it, but one important way in which I think being a woman is enriching for me is the fact that I'm always already aware of that positionality. I don't have a sense of absolute universality. And I think in that sense, gender and translation go hand in hand because they show precisely that there isn't just one way of understanding the world. And I think translation has often been gendered itself, has been represented as female, as feminine, and often in derogatory ways. If you think of the old tradition of the what the French used to call in the 18th century, les belles infidèles, the dictum that a translation was just like a wife. You could marry a beautiful wife, but then she would be unfaithful, or could marry an ugly wife, and then she would be faithful. Now, that's sexism embedded into the history of translation. Now, erasure is always a risk. Again, in all of those categories. And the point is, when you have translation practices which make translation invisible, which are language deaf, and so many academic disciplines even, and so many places, especially in the Anglophone world, but not only in the Anglophone world, are language deaf, forget to remember that something is happening through language. Now, when you do that, then translation can become a form of control and a form of erasure. But at the same time, if translation, on the other hand, is something that we're conscious of, that we can use productively, then it's not about erasure. It's about multiplying the possibilities of affecting reality, changing the world through that. This very strong sense of positionality. And also they have in common the sense of their artistic practices, indeed as sets of practices. A lot of them use, in one way or another, performance, for instance. They foreground the performative nature of who we are, of how we represent ourselves, of how we relate to each other. So I think all of them have got this sense of culture as something dynamic. All of them have had some experience, direct or indirect, of moving across cultures and moving across languages. That's what they have in common. But each one of them is also literally tracing a different kind of genealogy.